Hello, and welcome to the first episode of the Dickinson College Campus Recreation Podcast. My name is Elizabeth Warren, and I'm the Outdoor Education Curriculum Coordinator for Campus Recreation. I am joined here today by Chris Castillo, a Leave No Trace Master Educator. Chris, would you mind telling us about yourself?
Hi, everybody. My name is Chris Castillo. I am a Leave No Trace Master Educator, and I'm active with the Boy Scouts of America. My primary registration is in Baltimore Area Council, where I serve as the Conservation Committee Chair, but I also serve as the Outdoor Ethics Advocate for Area 6. So that's Maryland, Delaware, Southeastern Pennsylvania, and I work with Outdoor Ethics Advocates, the Leave No Trace folks in all of those councils, 8 councils in total, to help them put on Leave No Trace programming, Leave No Trace trainer courses, awareness sessions, and help make sure that we are spreading the good word.
Awesome. Would you mind explaining to our viewers exactly what outdoor ethics is and what the Leave No Trace principles are?
Sure. So outdoor ethics, thinking in a scouting context in particular, outdoor ethics is an umbrella for Leave No Trace and also for a few related ideas. Tread lightly. Tread lightly specifically focused on the same kind of idea, same kind of ethics, but as related to motorized or mechanized activities outdoors like ATVs, like shooting sports, like mountain biking. Outdoor ethics also encompasses the outdoor code that the Boy Scouts of America has, as well as the ideas incorporated in the land ethic, which is mostly drawn from the works of Aldo Leopold, the conservationist from the 20th century. Leave No Trace, though, is a program that's been around in some way, shape, or form for about 40 years or so. It started as a collaboration between a couple of government agencies who manage public lands, and the program was designed to help educate users to be able to use the land better. So Leave No Trace has 7 principles. Principle 1 is plan ahead and prepare. And when we think about planning ahead and preparing, know before you go. What's the weather going to be like? What are the facilities like? What gear do we need to bring? What facilities, so sanitation facilities or waste facilities? Are there trails? Are we going to be off trail in the backcountry? Knowing what to expect before we go is really important so that we can help to minimize the impacts that we have. The other 7 principles give us particular ways or particular items to think about along the way for different parts of what we would do in the outdoors. Principle 2 is to travel and camp on durable surfaces. So using the trails that are already established, parking in the parking lot, and trying to minimize foot traffic in pristine areas that are susceptible to damage. Principle 3 is to dispose of waste properly. So again, the emphasis on using the facilities that are available, if there are bathrooms, if there are trash cans or dumpsters, to use those just as we use at home or in a public park, or if we're in the backcountry, there are different techniques we might use to minimize the waste that we generate cooking, to dispose of bodily waste properly, and to make sure that we can minimize the contamination we have from that. Principle 4 is to leave what you find. So we've all heard the stories about people picking up artifacts in national parks or taking home Civil War bullets or skulls from animals. We want to leave all that in place. Part of the idea is that it's part of the natural environment. It belongs where we found it, and it doesn't necessarily belong at home on our shelf. The other idea is, if we think about why people take those sort of souvenirs, often it's to take the memory and not necessarily to take the souvenir. And so having a camera with us, which I think nowadays is pretty easy since everybody's got a phone, but also encouraging others to take the memories or to capture the memories in different ways that don't necessarily require taking the souvenir with us. Principle 5 is to respect wildlife. So we want to be conscientious that when we're in the outdoors, we are in their home, and so we want to be careful to minimize the amount of disturbance that we might have to them. We want to make sure, especially to safeguard our food, not just for our own sake, because we want to eat our food, but because we don't want them to get used to eating our food as well. And then principle 7 is to be considerate of other visitors. And so I like to think of this as the bookend opposite the plan ahead and prepare. So plan ahead and prepare before we go. And then when we're actually in the outdoors, if we think about the experiences others are having, so we think about what we're doing, what we enjoy doing, and be conscientious that others want to be doing the same kinds of things, then often that helps us make good decisions when we're in the outdoors to help others have that same quality experience that we would want.
That's incredible. So of course we're talking about leave no trace in an environmental context, as well as how it's affiliated with the Boy Scouts of America, and it's many ways that it affects the environment. Why would you say that leave no trace is important for everyone to follow?
It's important for everyone to follow because we all use the outdoors. Um, when I think about leave no trace, so the principles are really handy to help us think about particular aspects of our experience outdoors. But for me, leave no trace is actually a little bit bigger. For me, it's a mindset. For me, and when I teach leave no trace trainer courses, for example, this is the point I try to emphasize throughout, is that leave no trace is about making informed and conscientious decisions about how we use the outdoors. So part of that is acknowledging we really are going to get out and use the outdoors. We want to be in the outdoors. We want to be, whether it's hiking or backpacking, rock climbing, mountain biking, geocaching, anything in between. We want to be in the outdoors doing these kinds of activities, but we also want to make sure we're doing them responsibly. We don't want our being there to be destructive to the environment that's going to degrade the experience for others, and it's going to damage the integrity of the natural resources there. So we do want to make sure all of us together, individually and collectively, that we're able to have a good understanding of what the impacts are that we can have, and also have an understanding of how we can minimize or mitigate those impacts for the activities we enjoy doing.
One of the big things at Dickinson College is sustainability, and we are currently, we just achieved a carbon neutrality goal where we were carbon neutral by 2020, and that is constantly in the student mindset as well as embedded in our curriculums. Since Dickinson College is, an institution, I'm trying to think of different ways that we can give students ways to bring leave no trace into everyday life, whether that's them walking around campus or thinking about water usage. Do you have any suggestions?
Sure. So here again, I like to go back to the mindset. If we think about making informed and conscientious decisions about how we use the outdoors, there's a lot of decisions that we make every day that we might not realize, that we might make unconsciously, but that we still make every day about how we use resources, thinking very broadly. So maybe a couple examples. We think about waste. How do we dispose of waste? Well, the easy, obvious one that everybody knows, are we throwing our trash in a trash can? Are we making sure it gets to the right place so it can be disposed of, rather than just throwing it on the ground? One thing as I'm driving in my car, I notice there's always someone who flicks a cigarette butt out the window. And I'm not trying to say anything about folks who smoke, but it's something that we might do without thinking about it, that we've always just done. But having that thought, well, where does that go? Does it biodegrade? Who has to pick that up when it's on the side of the road and there's a lot of that trash that collects time after time? If we're thinking about waste in a slightly bigger context, if we have chemicals at home, that we don't need anymore, solvents or cleaners or even paint, even medication, what do we do with it? We don't want to put that down the toilet because it ends up in the water supply. And so kind of thinking ahead, not just the point A to point B, and as soon as it gets to point B, it's gone, but what happens after point B? Where does it go from there? Let's think about another dimension. So we thought about principle 3, dispose of waste properly. What about principle 6, respect wildlife? How many of us at home, or maybe even on campus, do we have a bird feeder out in our yard? And if so, do we only ever see birds, or do we end up seeing squirrels coming to visit as well? So as a simple example, having a bird feeder is a decision we make. We probably don't want to put bird feeders out literally everywhere, because we do want birds to be able to feed themselves for the most part. But in our own yard, we might want to attract certain birds, and for us, as a decision that we would make as homeowners, or as if we put one out on our balcony on our apartment, that's certainly a decision that we're able to make. But we also want to do our best to make sure that we are only feeding who we've intended to feed. So certainly the squirrels are going to find a way one way or another, but we don't have to make it easy for them at the very least. Having the food out that's available, whether it's bird feeders or even trash cans that sit behind our house or out behind our apartment building, if we don't keep them secure, they invite animals to come back for an easy meal, and that's not good for their digestive chemistry, but also not good for their behavior. We don't want them to be used to that, because that takes away from what they really should be doing. It takes away from their natural behaviors.
Just in response to some of those points, in case some of the students aren't aware, at Dickinson College with our cafeteria, all the food scraps that are taken are put into a big composting machine and then changed into biogas at the farm that's about 6.5 miles away from campus. So there's so many different things that we do as an institution that follow the sustainability and leave no trace principles when you really think about it. But again, there's so many things that you can do on an individual level. I want to move into questions that a few students have submitted over the past couple of days, and they're pertaining to what you do as a Leave No Trace master educator, as well as what they can personally do to become more involved. So what experiences have you had that have allowed you to put Leave No Trace into practice? It can be big or small.
Okay. I think for me, there's kind of two big categories. One category is actually just going out and doing it. Going out and enjoying the activities you like to enjoy and the kind of places you like to do them, and doing it, being very intentional about the mindset you're in. So for me personally, I've worked at a summer camp up in Alaska for the past 2 summers, and grew up here on the East Coast. So I'm used to a lot of suburbia everywhere. And so getting up there, it's just a whole new world, and I love it. There's space, there's mountains, there's woods. And I usually try to spend at least a few days when I'm not at summer camp out in the wilderness doing something, hiking the trails, camping, checking out some of the national parks up there. And so that's a great opportunity for me to really put into practice all of the theoretical knowledge that I have, and that I teach to folks in the trainer courses. So it's always different when you actually get to do it hands-on. I guess there's a saying, in theory and practice are the same, but in practice they're not, and they're really not. You end up having to make decisions that you might not have considered. You figure out what gear really works and what doesn't. You figure out how to do things, or you think about how you plan meals to minimize the food waste, to minimize the residue. And I guess the best part is you actually get to do it outdoors. You get to do something that you love doing, and the mindset that you're in, practicing the Leave No Trace principles, making those informed, conscientious decisions about how we use the outdoors, I think really only helps us enjoy it more. It helps us know that we are protecting the resources that are there, making sure that they are being used sustainably and responsibly so that others can continue to enjoy them as well. The other aspect I think about, and this is for me personally, is I really do enjoy teaching Leave No Trace as well. So I usually help to run several trainer courses throughout the year. Sometimes they're on weekends, like at a local scout camp. I also teach Leave No Trace trainer courses at National Camping School for the Boy Scouts. So I get to teach outdoor skills directors and conservation ecology directors in a lot more depth, how to teach them about the principles, teach them how to put the principles in practice, and hopefully through them be able to help spread the word about this program and spread the mindset about this program through our summer camps, really all across the Northeast region. So for me, I enjoy the teaching part. I'm a teacher by profession, so hopefully I enjoy the teaching part. But even as I'm teaching, I really do learn more as I go. I always, and it's not just me giving to the students. It's a lot of discussion, a lot of teachable moments as we're walking around in the woods. How do we how do we think about this? How do we approach the situation? What factors do we consider, and how do we end up making that decision? And hearing from all the participants, they've all got a lot of different experiences of their own, some good, some bad, and some that are new. And I love hearing the new ideas. I love hearing the discussions, and I love seeing them develop how they think about the principles.
I personally remember sitting through one of your outdoor ethics courses last May, as well as at National Camping School, listening to the ecology workshops. And I know that a lot about what you talked about has resonated with me, and I've continued to think about it throughout my daily life and in my outdoor career. So you're getting your job done. It's working.
That's great. For me, that's like my vision of success. That even if the folks I've talked with or presented to don't remember the principles themselves, it's not so much about the 7 principles in order. It's about the mindset. How do we think about them? Do we have this ethic of responsibility, this ethic of sustainability, this ethic of conservation for our resources? So that's great to hear.
This is a great segue into our next question. I know myself, I'm very interested in this, as are a few other students on campus. Is becoming a Leave No Trace trainer, not necessarily a master educator, available to college students who don't have any scouting training, as it is primarily thought about in scouting, and what steps can they take to become involved?
Short answer is yes. So the Leave No Trace big picture is administered through the Leave No Trace Center for Outdoor Ethics, which is headquartered in Colorado. And they partner with a lot of different organizations as well as private individuals to offer Leave No Trace training programs. Boy Scouts of America is just one of many organizations they partner with, but other organizations like the National Outdoor Leadership School, or like the Appalachian Trail Club, or like even REI stores will often have a Leave No Trace trainer course that they will offer. One of their employees, for example, is a master educator, and so they'll put on a course on a weekend that the public can sign up for. So there are a lot of organizations out there. The price will vary. Fair warning, the price will vary depending on who you end up going with. If you are involved with scouting, often it's a little bit cheaper. And if you're not involved with scouting, maybe you could be involved with scouting. There's a lot to do in scouting beyond just the outdoor ethics stuff. So I had to get a little bit of a plug in there.
Absolutely.
But one place to look if you're interested in taking a course, if you go to lnc.org, that's the Leave No Trace Center's website, and they do maintain a list of courses throughout the country. It's not necessarily everyone throughout the country, but they've got a pretty good list. So especially if you're interested in going to a particular place or doing a particular kind of activity on a trainer course, you can probably, and you're willing to travel, I suppose, you're probably able to find one that's of interest to you.
Yeah, absolutely, that's very helpful. And to transition into our last question, what recommendations would you give to someone who is interested in becoming a Leave No Trace trainer or being a part of the Leave No Trace community?
Part of it, educate yourself, and part of it is share the message with others. And part of it, there's a lot of resources out there too. So in terms of educating yourself, there's a lot of good books on Leave No Trace. So if you are a book person, I'm a book person. If you're a book person, there's a lot of good ones. The Leave No Trace Center on their website has a store where they do have a lot of literature. For me personally, there's a book, Backpacker Magazine put together a book, and it's not particularly recent, but it's a good book. It covers the principles really well and covers how you might apply them in different kinds of locations. So how we apply them in the woods is different than how we apply them in the mountains, is different than how we apply them in the deserts, is different than how we apply them in, if we're on water, large waterways like out west. And so even though it's the same 7 principles, we might see them applied differently depending on what activities we're doing and what the resources are that are available for us to use. If you're not a book person, there's a lot of good videos. The center actually does put out a lot of good YouTube videos, especially. So the center has videos. I want to say it's the Appalachian Trail Club or Appalachian Trail Conservancy also has short videos. They have a "Don't Be That Guy" series which are really funny. So especially if you're looking to share with others, so I guess this transitions us from one to the other. If you're looking to share with others, those are good ones. They're funny, they're short, and they highlight common, I'll say common practices that are not best practices, but that we might encounter. So if we're hiking on the Appalachian Trail, for example, have we ever come across a big group that camps in one of the shelters? Have we ever come across somebody eating lunch right next to the trail and feeding whatever critter comes by, or that's listening to loud music, as they're eating lunch right next to the trail. And so, you get a funny scenario, and then you get a little bit of here's the principle we think about, and here's what might be better. And a lot of it too is just offering ideas. How do we, being conscientious about how we think about things, and having a good bank of ideas to draw from as to what else we might do. That's not the same way we've always done it, but that might be a little bit better, a little more responsible. When we go out with others, that plan ahead and prepare piece is big. How often do we, Saturday afternoon, it's nice out, we've got an hour or two. How often do we go out and say, grab a friend or two, let's go for a hike in the park, which I think is a great thing to do on a Saturday afternoon when we've got an hour or two. But make sure, as you're going, that everybody is on the same page. Make sure everybody is really going to stay on the trail. Make sure everybody's got some water with them. Check the weather. Real quick on your phone. Check the weather. If it's going to rain, make sure you bring an umbrella or bring a rain jacket or something. If you're going into the woods, and there are trails, make sure you're going single file, which, especially if you're going with a couple of friends, is a little different than what we're used to doing. If we're walking around campus, sidewalks usually wide enough we can walk 3 or 4 abreast, and we can chat and carry on and be a little loud and walk slowly. If we're on the trail out in the woods, we probably want to reconsider each of those aspects. We probably want to walk single file. We probably want to, and I don't want to say not talk at all, but we want to be conscientious of our voices. Make sure that if we're trying to talk from the back of the line to the front of the line, maybe we need to switch who's in the front and who's in the back. So it's easier to talk to each other. Again, really simple stuff, but just to make sure that everybody who's going has the same kind of understanding, knows kind of what the expectations are, knows where we're going, knows best practices for while we're there, to make sure that we really can do it responsibly, enjoy ourselves, but still do it responsibly. I guess, does that get a good answer to that question?
Absolutely. That was a thorough and amazing response. Thank you. Well, thank you so much for your time and for your expertise. And I hope that you're well. Thank you so much.
Of course. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.